everybody. Welcome back to Wrestling Travel presents the Lockdown Sessions. Today, we are very happy to have with us, all the way from Niagara Falls in New York, Mr. Vince Valor. Vince, how are you doing today?
I'm great, man. I really appreciate you having me on for this. Thank you.
Oh, man, absolutely. Our pleasure. We're glad that we're able to do this in such short notice, man, especially with the holiday.
Yeah, this worked out perfectly. Today was my day off. I was like, all right, I got a free schedule, so let's do this as quick as possible.
Cool. So we've been doing the lockdown sessions, just catching up with everybody, what they've been doing in the pandemic that we're experiencing. And we'll get to that in a second. But first of all, as you know, we're out of the UK. Let's familiarize ourselves with Vince Valor. How long have you been in the business?
Just past 10 years, actually.
Fantastic. Wow.
And 2010, I started training. I trained in Canada over at the Neo Wrestling Federation dojo. I was trained by my head trainer, Tiberius King, but we also had a lot of guys coming in and out of there to help us along the way, guys like Danger Boy Derek Wild, Sean Spears, Scotty Turner, guys like that. So pretty much like a best of Canada was there to train us and help us along the way. So I'm really grateful for the training I received.
Yeah, we've, I've interviewed a plethora of people out of Canada and got a chance to go up. Obviously, SummerSlam was in Toronto, but did a little tour of Canada before, found some small promotions in Montreal and stuff. But there's a lot of pro wrestling, especially on the indie scene, going on in Canada.
Yeah, definitely in the Toronto area. It was like it's bigger now than it ever was, but like back when I was starting off, like you had those are like some of the bigger guys, the ones I was mentioned, like Sean Spears, Derek Wild, but there's also guys like Tyson Dukes and Cody Deaner. Like those guys were just great. We were grateful to have them in the locker room, guys like that to learn from. It was an awesome experience earlier on, like to be able to share the ring with those guys and learn from them as much as you can. Like, so Canada wrestling was really great to me, and I'm very appreciative of being able to train there.
I had Tyson on a couple weeks ago, and I asked him the same question because, when the WWE brings a big event somewhere like WrestleMania, SummerSlam, all the other wrestling promotions kind of follow suit for that whole big weekend. And I asked him, I said, man, Toronto seemed like a hotbed. He said there's almost too much wrestling right now in Toronto, but
he's doing his part now. He just opened his training school a couple of years ago. Like he's doing really great things. And like you ask any Canadian wrestler, anybody around that area, like they'll all say such great things about Tyson, like what he's done for them and how he's helped them in their career. So it's great to see him giving back and like opening his school to train for the future generation. Like I know he's training his son to wrestle. I had a chance to tag with his son on a show in St. Catharines, Ontario, not too long ago, and it was just really great to see like how far guys are coming along there.
How old is his son? I had no idea that his son was that old.
Ethan Dukes, I think he just turned 18 or is turning 18, but he's a bigger guy. Like like I said, he's in great hands training with his father. His father's the best in Canada. So like it's exciting to see like how far he's going to go in the future.
And just so I make sure I've got this correct, you are a U.S. citizen, not Canadian, correct?
Yeah, I'm in U.S. Niagara Falls, but where I trained was so close to the border. Like I started out training in Rochester, but if I wanted to do it, I was going to do it right. So it was tough to be able to, with everything I had going on at the time, it was tough to like make that drive 2-3 times a week and still like maintaining everything else in my life. But that's when I found the Neo Wrestling Dojo. It was like probably like 10-15 minutes away from my house. It was just a matter of crossing that border. So like, I mean, there was nights where I couldn't make training because the border was so backed up on our side. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be sitting here for about 3-4 hours, going to miss training tonight. But it was closer to home, so it made things easier for me.
Yeah, it's kind of, I was up in Canada prior to last summer, but one of the last times it was harder for me to get back home than it was to get into Canada. And now obviously we've got
the more you travel, the more like they become more familiar with you. Like it's like, all right, you're going to wrestle tonight. All right, have fun. But like then you'll get some of the other security guards that ask you 100 questions, send you inside for further questioning. And it's guys, I was just here last night.
Oh, it's crazy. So how long now? When was your last match before we hit the pandemic? When was the last time you wrestled?
I want to say it was February, early February, late February, sometime in February is in Rochester, New York for Empire State Wrestling. It was a fatal four-way match with Frankie Feathers, Gavin Glass, and Jerk Hawkins. And I think it was the second time ESW had a show in Rochester. ESW, Empire State Wrestling, like that's my home promotion. That's the one place I'll do anything for. I've gone above and beyond to help make ESW what it is. So like, I'm glad that like, who knows when wrestling is going to return, but if that was my last match for a while, I'm glad it was with ESW.
Now, the odd thing is, just last weekend, I went to wrestling here in Wisconsin. We've opened back up.
Yeah.
We did the social distancing, the head thermometers, the hand sanitizers, and the masks. But I know that there's a lot of states that are without. I know Illinois is talking about opening up at 20%. Is there any talk on the East Coast about like a possible, hey, we might have shows in August, October, or is there not even any talk right now?
There's been talk, but nothing's like set in stone. Like it's going to be a long road before places in New York are going to be able to get back to where they were. Over the next couple of weeks, I know there's shows in Pennsylvania that have things going on, but I think the rule for them is like they have to have separate changing rooms, only like 50% capacity, and it's tough. Like I'm sure for a promoter, it's tough to make money on that. It's tough for the boys on the show to make money. So I'm sure they're going to be really strict on things like intermission and merch sales and interacting with fans. So like, and that's for guys like me and for guys like a lot of others, that's where a lot of our money comes from with this. So it's tough to really get back to where things were with that. And I don't know, as far as wrestling in New York, I like as much as I miss it, I don't want to rush it to where we have to run with all these rules and restrictions to where it takes away from the experience of what we do. Like I'd rather like, I don't want the time off, but like take the time off, take a time to let things digest, and then like be patient with this so that when we can do things again, it's at full capacity. You're able to interact with fans. You're able to do things how you were able to do it before and still have that full experience of going to a wrestling show. The last thing I want to see or do is have somebody rush this, and then we're right back to square one with all of it to where it's going to be another year or two before we can do this again.
Yeah, 100%. I kind of compare it to like being sick or being injured. And if you rush that, like, hey, I could wait a couple more weeks and heal up, or I jump in right now and then, like you say, you're back at square one. I'm afraid that some outlaw promoter is going to ruin it for everybody. And
that's all it takes is one place to rush it. And I think there was a place nearby in New York that they started announcing dates without permission to do it. It's like, but then just the other day they had to cancel it and say, oh no, we goofed. But it's like, that's all it takes is one place, and it ruins it for the whole state or for the whole area.
Right. And that's what I'm worried about. I always say like wrestling always gets, I love it. Everybody I know loves it, but your general Joe public might look down a little bit on their nose upon us and our business. And all it takes is for, like you said, one thing to go wrong and everybody's going to have this.
And pro wrestling catches enough shit as it is. Like that's the last thing I want to see is like, no, wrestling ruling the rule for everybody. And now nobody can go out of their house now. Like,
yeah, this damn pro wrestlers. I'll tell you what, though, I always do say we did a thing for WrestleMania, the WrestleMania crawl. We usually do it for Connor's Cure. We ended up being able to do it this year for the Red Cross. And no matter what the general public's position is on pro wrestling and pro wrestlers, I will say this. Our fans and the wrestlers are some of the most generous and giving group of people that I know. We raised over $3,300 for the Red Cross WrestleMania weekend, and I'm like, that's not easy to do when you're not sure where your next dollar bill is coming from. So
yeah,
as much as people look down their nose, it's like if you just almost with everything, if you just give everything a little bit of chance and research it, you'll find out that for the most part, our fans and the wrestlers are generous, great giving people. What have you been doing now since February till today is July 3rd? Full disclosure, in case we're watching this at a later date. What have you been doing to keep yourself kind of in the zone as far as pro wrestling goes?
Just like laying around, like playing video games and sitting on my ass eating. No, no, not much has changed for me in that regard. Like I'm still working every day. Like I'm considered an essential worker. So like I've been able to have my job every morning and then like from there, I'll go do my workout and watch as much wrestling as I can. And I know that's sort of like the cliche answer, like, oh, just lift weights and watch wrestling. But no, but like this time off has taught me to like be creative with my workouts. Like before it was just, all right, go to the gym, spend an hour, hour and a half there and go home and do things that way. But I'm like, before I was so big into the weightlifting and like getting as much muscle as I could. Now it's teaching me to be creative. Like I still have the weights at home. Like we have the weight bench, squat rack, all that stuff. But like I'm doing more outdoor workouts too. Like I think this couldn't have, like, as crazy as it sounds, it couldn't have come at a better time. So like I would hate to be like stuck at home during the winter to where like you couldn't go outside and go for a run or stuff like that. But like before I was a wrestler, I was a football player. So like we had all these drills and everything set into place to where like I'm able to incorporate a lot of that stuff now into my workouts now to keep busy. Like just before this, I just ended up running a 5K this morning for charity. So like that was something I hadn't done in a while, something I hadn't really like trained for as far as how to like pace myself in running. I just went out there and did it. But like that's become like my daily routine as far as keeping busy. Like I'll strap on a weight vest, I'll go for a bike ride, I'll run the bleachers at the stadium, I'll flip the tractor tire, like anything I can to like be creative with my workouts and keep busy so that if and when wrestling does come back, like I don't want to come back and, you know, be that guy that that's out of shape that people are paying money to see. Like if you're paying your money to watch a wrestling show, you better be getting the most out of your money's worth to where like you're seeing larger than life stars. You don't want to see somebody coming out of quarantine that looks just totally terrible.
Yeah, no cardio and flabby. How did the 5K
And
go
that's
though?
going to be the problem for a lot of the guys. It's just like I feel like that's going to be a problem. A lot of guys are going to come back out of shape, and like obviously in-ring cardio is much different than anything else. Like I can run until I'm blue in the face, but like getting in that ring is a totally different beast. So like that's going to be a challenge in itself. But I'm doing all the best I can to be able to prepare for it for when wrestling does return.
Tell you what, this is probably early 2000s. One of the guys had the ring set up at his house, and we went there every night for 2-3 hours. 85, 90 degrees in the sun, and just went over just a ton of stuff, getting excited. And it was a tag team match where we were going to take the tag titles. And I got in the ring that Saturday night. I was about 2 minutes in and I was blown up. Just something about the crowd. And, I get that nervous. I got to go pee before a match and everything. And I was like, man, it was 90 degrees in the sun and we're running these drills. And I said, I'm in the ring for maybe 2 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I got to tag out, man. I was blown up, but there is something totally different. I think it's the adrenaline I get with, not just me, but I think everybody. You get fired up in front of a crowd.
And that's the thing too, is like trying to like adapt to the different environments of where you're wrestling at. Like you said, wrestling in 85, 90 degree weather, like it's brutal. And like, as much as like I miss wrestling, like that's the tough part is like, if we were wrestling now, it would be all these outdoor summer shows, and like having to wrestle 15, 20 minutes in that heat is a totally different beast. Like it's nothing like you're used to. Like,
What did you,
something you have to prepare for.
yeah, it totally is. And it's like, you can't prepare for it. It's just,
Yeah.
much as you can, or those rain shows where you got the slick canvas or lack of canvas, or some promoters bought a tarp that's going to double as a canvas and it's raining now. So all the fun that we have or did have on the thing. What did you do? You said you kind of watch wrestling matches. What's kind of your go-to? You got any go-to like early 80s NWA? Do you or what kind of wrestling would you
My
go
go-to is like my biggest inspiration for this to get into wrestling and all throughout wrestling has been Eddie Guerrero. He's my favorite wrestler of all time. Like he's been like he's always my go-to to if I need inspiration on what to do or how to do it. Like Eddie Guerrero is who I watch and who I try to emulate as best as I can. So like guys with that kind of style. I mean, it's I can only watch so much of it. I mean, you can't watch too much Eddie Guerrero, obviously, but I don't know. I try to broaden my horizons with that too. I'll watch guys from like that area, like guys like, okay, Eddie Guerrero had a great match with Dean Malenko. Let's watch Dean Malenko matches, and then like Dean Malenko had a great match with this guy. They watch some of his matches. So it all sort of turns into like a chain of like those type of wrestlers.
Yeah, that's kind of like I was with music. Somebody said, find. I think it was Gene Simmons because I was big into Kiss at one time, and he goes, go find somebody you like, and then find out who influenced them, and then go back and go
Yeah.
back. Um, was Eddie Guerrero like when you're a young Vince Valor? Is he one of the first guys you see on TV, or was there somebody else like when you first discovered pro wrestling?
When I first discovered wrestling, it was like I'm a '90s baby, so it was like guys like The Rock and Stone Cold. Like The Rock and Undertaker were two of the ones that I really like hooked onto. But like as I got older and like started to like see past the pageantry of it and start to appreciate the in ring aspect and the wrestling of it more, like that's when I started to appreciate guys like teach. It's something you have that's something you're born with. Like it's like that's what carries you most in this business is your passion for it and how far you're willing to go for it. But like it wasn't until like I got like a little bit older in age and started to dissect wrestling a little more is when I started to appreciate guys like that.
I got a small story and a homework assignment for you then. So I'm much older than you are, but I grew up watching the AWA. And every week you'd have your maybe you'd have two stars face each other, but for the most part, it was your star and your preliminary wrestler. I'm watching a tag team match, and I think it's Bad Company who are the tag team champions who went on to be the Orient Express. A guy, an up and comer named Ricky Rice, who had won a few matches, and then Mondo Guerrero comes on my TV screen, and I'm like, "Who's this jobber? I have no idea." And the moves and stuff that he was pulling out in the late 80s. And then, of course, they went on Super Clash 3, brought in Mondo Hector and then Chavo Sr. So that whole Guerrero clan, they ahead of their time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe just bringing that lucha up north, which I was, from a small town kid in Wisconsin. I was like, oh, Mondo, I can't even say his last name. This guy's going to take the pinfall. And lo and behold, it was one of my favorites, Ricky Rice taking the pinfall. But that Mondo was just impressive. When you go on and watch classic wrestling, I'm just going to get your idea on this. I have noticed, and it might just be me in my old age, but when you go back and watch some classic 80s wrestling, 90s wrestling, we've got a lot of moves that I don't see used very much today. My go-to is, and you might see it more on the East Coast, but I haven't seen an atomic drop, regular or inverted in forever.
No, it's one of those things that often gets overlooked because everybody's so worried about hitting their high spot or hitting that super kick that like they they look past like the moves that like really brought them to the table, like moves that were utilized back then. Like I talked about my that's one thing I do appreciate is like I talked about my last match, that Fatal 4-Way. Like one of the guys that wrestles Frankie Feathers, he uses an atomic drop every match. So like it's
Okay.
awesome to see like guys like him still use that. Like it's important to not get away from those type of moves just to worry about like whatever 450 you're going to hit off the top or super kick, hitting 12 super kicks. It's like I don't know. I know that type of wrestling is hot nowadays, and that's what's in, and that's what everybody bites on. It's not my style. I'm like, I was taught very on in training less is more. So like you like not not as a lazy type of way, but also like doing things that you know is going to elicit a reaction instead of doing things just because you can do them. Like if I could backflip, I'm not going to backflip just because I can. Like I'm going to do it if it makes sense. Which
Right.
is why the way I feel about like all these, like I said, all these super kicks, all the forearms, the leg slaps, or the 450s, shit like that. It's like I don't know. Like I said, I know it's in. It's what's hot right now. It's not my style. I'm all about telling a story in that ring, and I don't feel like hitting all those moves in a matter of 30 seconds is telling much of a story other than I can do this stuff. Like
Yeah, Vince, I like you already. We're on the same page. That's where I feel like the psychology was missing. Last fall, I got a chance to talk to Joe Laurinaitis, Road Warrior Animal, doing a seminar, and same thing. He's like, man, not only we're losing that psychology, um, a lot of the usage of like the referees and some of the main stuff is just, you got a guy counting the 20 on a tag, just like You know, we just lose that, you know, that idea. We're putting on a show, but I want this to be as believable as possible was always what I was taught and brought up. But like you say, if I was wrestling before you and I do a 450 splash, 18 super kicks, this and that, and then, okay, now your finish is got to be something ridiculous to top the one that we just had. I think that we lose it. And it's I try to say that with a grain of salt, where I'm not ragging on anybody, but man, I get sick of it. A lot of people will just look at it as one dimensional. Oh, okay, I saw all these awesome super kicks and flips, where I'm looking at it as the whole show. Okay, well, what do we got left? One of my banes of my existence, and you don't have to get in on this if you don't want to be controversial, is the night of the death matches that some of these people run. Like, I was always brought up that well, man, we got a steel cage match. This is kind of we're wrapping it all up here. You know,
That's your big sell there. And like
now
that's another thing to consider too. Like it's like not just for guys that are in the ring, but for the audience too. Like people are paying money to see this. You think they want to see the same 15-minute match 8 times on a card? Like you got differentiate it up a little bit. Like you can have 1 or 2 matches where it's these big high spots, but like the rest of the card, like you gotta like feel it out. Like that's one thing. Like I try my best to be able to pride myself on is like feeling out what the audience needs and like where they're at, like how they're feeling about what the rest of the card's been like you usually can go out there and like take a look around, seeing like those, like that's something I think is like those first 2 to 3 rows, like those are the people that are really like sitting there with their arms crossed, judging every move you make. Like they paid the money for those seats. They're gonna hang on it the most, and like they're being the most critical of it. So you need to impress them before you can impress the rest of the audience behind them. And that's all about like, that all comes with time and experience, being able to feel that out and see where they're at and what they need. But like, I don't feel that what they need is to see the same match every time. And like you said, like if there's a steel cage match on the card, all right, let them have it. They're the ones doing the hardcore stuff. You don't need to see that every other match on the card.
Yeah, I'm always surprised just because I know me, but there's a lot of promotions like, hey, this is the night of the death match. And I'm like, holy shit, I don't know if I could sit through 5-6 matches of just blood. And I have a hard time during WrestleMania weekend. As much as I love pro wrestling, I'll go see, and there's times when I'm like, holy, I love it. I can't get enough of it normally, but I need a night off. I don't know if I can, go and watch everything. So just to blow everybody away with one type of match.
Like the night of the death matches stuff, like that's, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm terrible at interrupting on Zoom.
No, you're good. Like the night of the deathmatch stuff, like I understand, like I'm not shitting on it in any way. Like there's an audience for that type of stuff, and like that's the stuff that they love. It's just like it's hard to really get everybody behind that the way you want them to. Like you have your hardcore fans who like that's what they love, that's what they're drawn to is hardcore wrestling, and that's it. They won't broaden their horizons to anything else. So the night of the deathmatch stuff, like that's huge for them. That's their WrestleMania. But there's other fans who like different stuff. They like the old school style. Some like the super indie stuff. Like it's everybody has their different cup of tea, and not everybody's gonna bite on every little thing.
Yeah, 100%. Like I always say, if they're selling tickets, who am I to shit on? I sound like some crazy old vet going, oh, blah, 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 but I won't name any names there. But I mean, I'm glad everybody's got a chance to work. But I was like, man, I've seen so many of them just within, maybe 6 months prior to, us kind of going in the pandemic. I'm like, I dug the violence in ECW. But then ECW brought in Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko. They had everything, they had Al Snow. They had almost like a smorgasbord of, we've got these kind of ultra violent matches going on in angles. But now, hey, here's Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko. What do you guys think of that? And it's like, man, it was great.
And it's changing it up a little bit. Like they were so built on the hardcore aspect of wrestling. It's like, okay, now we're bringing in wrestlers. Like let's change it up a little bit. Let's see how our crowd reacts to this. And it's interesting to think like had that carried on, like where there's a mixture of the hardcore wrestling and the Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko type of wrestling, like where ECW would be today if they were still around.
Yeah, 100%. Wasn't My memory might be fuzzy on that, but I think ECW might have been the first place here in North America where we got Rey Mysterio, if I'm
I
not
believe it was, yeah.
mistaken. And then he went to WCW. Um, who are some of the bigger names now, Vince, that you've had a 10-year career? Who are some of the bigger names that you've had an opportunity to kind of step in the ring with, either tagging
Um,
with or maybe as an opponent?
most of them have been tag matches. It's like and like credit a lot of that to Empire State Wrestling. They're the ones that like they put the trust and the faith in me to be able to have those matches with these type of names. So like I'm always grateful to have those type of opportunities there. Like they bring in these big names every show, so it's great to see your name on the card next to them. Some that stand head and shoulders above the rest is MVP. I had a chance to tag with him. I think it was about like 4 years ago. Hornswoggle was the year after that. Someone that's from your area. And then Nunzio most recently. I think it was 2 years ago. I was supposed to wrestle the Spirit Squad. Something happened there to where Mikey couldn't make it, but we ended up wrestling the Private Party from AEW on that show. It was so like places like ESW. I credit them a lot for like providing me with these opportunities, providing me with the platform to showcase what I can do, and like trusting me and having the faith that like if they're spending the big bucks to bring these names in, like this is the guy that they want in the ring with them. So it's really cool to have that trust and faith behind me there.
Yeah, and sometimes it's pretty cool that you're in the ring, and all of a sudden later on you find out somebody they brought in has become like saw Private Party, uh, boy, about a year ago. I had no idea who they were, and got to watch them work, and they're fantastic. You know.
And that's the thing, like we didn't have any idea at the time. Like we did our research, but like that was a night before the decision, because like going into that, it was supposed to be myself and my tag team partner at the time, James Sega. We were supposed to wrestle Kenny and Mikey, the Spirit Squad. They canceled last minute. We were able to get Private Party in there, like just confirmed, like less than 24 hours before. I was like, at that point, I'd never heard of them, and I wasn't familiar with them. So like we tried to watch what we could on YouTube, but even then, you don't really know someone until you like see them in person or like get the chance to get a feel for how they work. And it was a great match. It was a good opportunity for us, especially knowing like how much sex Private Party would go on to have. But at the time, it was a really big clash of styles that we didn't prepare for. Like myself and my partner at the time, like we modeled ourselves after the APA. Like we were going out there, we were the big bruiser tag team that would just go out there and beat people up and throw people around. And these guys are all about flips and high flying, and like that's great. Like we mentioned earlier, like there's like how we like sort of shit on the idea of 10-15 super kicks a match. Like these guys can do it and make sense out of it to where like it's telling a good story to the audience and to where it's going to keep them on their feet hanging for more. So like I'm really glad that we were able to have that match with them, and then to go on and see the success those guys have had now on AEW.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty cool feeling. Back on the super kicks, I think closer to your area, Easton, Pennsylvania in 2015, I went to the King of Trios. Chikara it was after a long summer of work and that Labor Day weekend. And to see Matt and Nick Jackson and AJ Styles live in like basically what's like a high school gymnasium doing, and plus they had the guys from Lucha Underground. For me, that was my first time really up close seeing a lot of these acrobatics, and I gotta say it was impressive. But as with everything, week after week, it gets on me. What do you think of the one thing that I said has been proven? Just because we had matches in Wisconsin this last weekend, I said when we get the fans back in pro wrestling, they're going to be back at like 120%, because what I think we've learned from watching, I don't know if you got a chance to watch any of the empty arena stuff, but man, the fans are a huge part of our business. And without them, it's been proven. And our fans in Wisconsin came back at like 150%. They're just their decibel level and everything. Have you gotten a chance to watch any of the empty arena stuff? I guess is my main question.
It's hard to watch. It's tough. Like, and I cannot like even watching it, I couldn't imagine what it's like to be able to have to perform in front of that. So I give like the WWE and AEW guys all the credit in the world for being able to perform in an empty arena. I know just recently they started to add some of the NXT trainees in there, and like, I mean, it's good to be able to have sort of a crowd reaction, but it's not the organic crowd reaction you want. It's forced. They're being told like, okay, you have to be there, you have to clap for everything, little thing, whether you like it or not, just so that we have some sort of crowd reaction. It's I mean, it's tough to watch, but it's interesting to watch too, to see like how creative they've been, like especially with something like WrestleMania. Like you look at stuff like the Boneyard match and the, what did they call it, the Funhouse Firefly match with Wyatt and Cena, like stuff like that. Like it adds an extra dimension to it, to where it becomes less wrestling and more like of the cinematic experience of it, which is great, because those are like two of the most talked about matches of the entire 2-night card. So that's great. But it'd be hard to like really understand like how it would be had we not been in that current situation where like look at the Undertaker's sake, for example. Like, could he have gone out there and had that match with AJ Styles had it been in front of an 80,000 fan arena? Like, at his age, who's to say? But it's different to watch that stuff, and it makes me excited too for when wrestling does come back. Like, I don't want to have to come back and have there be 10, 15 people in the crowd. Like, obviously we've all had our experiences where we're wrestling in front of 10, 15 people anyway, but I want it to come back where it is at full capacity and where fans are like excited and we get that full experience, like to where like these fans, like as much as wrestlers have been off for the last 3-4 months, however long it's been, like these fans have been sitting at home too. They're watching stuff every week. They're itching to come back too and be a part of that experience. Like, so I want them to be at their full strength. I want them to bring up the decibel. Like, I want them to enjoy their experience to where like these last 3-4 months off, they're come back and they're unleashing it. Like, whether they love it or hate it, I want them to enjoy what they have and enjoy that wrestling's back.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I saw that last weekend in Green Bay, just the fans coming back and just the energy level. You could kind of cut it with a knife, which was exciting, which makes me excited when I talk to people like you where wrestling hasn't come back yet, just to be like, man, when it comes back, you're going to really, really enjoy it. Do you have a bucket list at all, Vince, at all? Like, hey, here's a couple guys that I really want to tear it up in the ring with before it's all said and done?
I've had those talks with myself recently about like who's left, like who haven't I wrestled that I really want to wrestle, like, because for me it's not about like, okay, I want to wrestle this name, that name, these big names that have been on TV. It's about guys that I have history with, guys that I'm friends with, guys that I feel like I could tell a good story with. And like anybody that I've wanted to wrestle, I have wrestled. Like I've wrestled my best friend here who helped me set up the show, Matt Milan. I've wrestled my brother-in-law, big time Bill Collier. I've wrestled like guys that I've had developed and had great chemistry with, like guys like Brandon Thurston and Cloudy of the Buffalo and Rochester area. And the list goes on and on. Like we mentioned earlier, Tyson Dukes, Cody Deaner, all Ego, Ethan Page. I've had a chance to wrestle these guys and have great matches with them. So like over the last 10 years, I've like conquered names off that bucket list. Like anybody I've come across I want to wrestle, okay, I've wrestled them. I've had a good match with them. I can move on to the next one. The only one that's left, and this was supposed to happen back in May while we were off, but current circumstances and situations prohibit that, is my trainer, the guy that brought me into this, the guy that broke me into the business, Tiberius King. Like that's in the window of opportunity is closing for that. He's getting older. I'm getting older. So who knows when that's going to happen. But it was supposed to happen here back in May. It's tough. It's disappointing that it hasn't happened yet. But that's like since the beginning, that's the one match that I've wanted, is to be able to go out there, tear it up with the guy that trained me, and prove myself to him, like so that he can sit back too and think, all right, like I've done a good job with this one. I can like relax knowing that I helped wrestling into the future. Like, as silly as it sounds, like a passing of the torch thing, I don't know, but like I want him to be proud of what he's accomplished with me. So like that's big for me, is after these 10 years being able to prove to him like how grateful I am of him and everything he's done for me. And like that's the only way I could do it, is by going out there and having that great match with him.
No, that totally makes sense. That's cool. That's a cool answer. Couple more questions and I'll let you go. be sensitive of your time here. What would be the greatest piece of advice that you've gotten in pro wrestling?
Boy, how much time we got?
Or if because sometimes that's a tough question to put on the spot. What would be the greatest piece of advice that you could give? You could do it either way.
There's been so much. I mean, where do we really narrow that down to? Like I've always, and you hear it from a lot of the old timers, like, oh, slow down, ears open, mouth shut, like less is more, stuff like that. But like, and that might just seem like a load of bullshit when you're first hearing it, but like that stuff really resonates with you. That makes sense. That's where you like that sets the tone for how you're gonna go about your career. Like you hear those words and like you carry that with you, and like the more you do it, the longer you do it, the more it starts to make sense. Like, all right, that old bastard was right. Like he might have just been busting my chops earlier on, but like he saw something like to where like you see guys rushing, you guys see guys rushing through the movements and like not feeling out that there's an audience and more worried about their spot, like that they forget there's an audience there. So like that's something that's important. Like less is more. You do have to slow down, ears open, mouth shut. Take any advice you can get. It's that stuff carries with you. That stuff goes a long way. One of the things I learned earlier on too is from somebody who went on to have great success with WWE and AEW, Sean Spears. Right before he left for, I think he got signed in 2013, he stopped by at their training school, and one of the big things he said is that no matter how hard you're working, no matter how good you think you are, there's somebody out there that's better than you. There's somebody out there that wants it more than you. There's somebody out there that's working harder than you, and you shouldn't be okay with that.
No, that's great. I mean, that's not a question I usually ask. It just kind of came into with having 10 years. So sorry to throw you. Some of my questions. I got called a journalist about a month ago, and I feel bad for the guy who said that because I'm just a guy going,
no,
hey.
It's great because like I do a lot of these things before, and like you hear like a lot of the same routine questions, like, oh, who broke you in? What was your favorite match? Or like, what do you want to go see yourself in 5 years? But like, it's great to be caught off guard with questions like that because it makes you think on the spot. Like, all right, like, wait, what is the best advice I've received in 10 years? But like, those are some of the ones that stand head and tall above the rest.
Yeah, I had Nikita Koloff 2 weeks ago, which I never thought Nikita Koloff and I would be able to have a chance to chat. He was very gracious. I took like an hour of his time, but I'm like, man, I want to ask you, but I know everybody has about the best of 7 with Magnum TA. But I said, what was it? But what really, you've been asked that 1,000 times. Were you prepared for after Magnum got in his car accident when they paired him up with Dusty Rhodes as superpowers for such a switch? Like he got so much heat going up against the Rock and Roll Express, him and Ivan, getting booed in every town. And now he's on the flip side of that. And actually, after we got done, he was, hey, some good questions. And I'm like, I was just spitballing. So Empire State Wrestling, hopefully you guys are getting back to normal. The main thing, the number one question that I can ask you on this is the reason why I do this is where can the fans follow Vince Valor? Do you have any merch links? I'll ask you to, email them to me. We could put them on the screen, but basically how can the fans follow your career?
I'm all over the social media, and it took me a while to even get into that. Like for a while, it was just Facebook, and that's it. But I started to realize, like, all right, I gotta start connecting more with different people on different platforms. So I have the Twitter at Vince Valor 31, Instagram I'm at Vinstagram31, Facebook Invincible Vince Valor, on Snapchat, YouTube, whatever. As far as merchandise, I believe this is still going on right now, 20% off at Pro Wrestling Tees. But I have a lot of my T-shirts up on there. Or even to send me like a direct message. Like I have T-shirts I'm willing to ship, like, stuff like that. But yeah, I'm all over the social media, the merchandise game. Find most of it at Pro Wrestling Tees. If not, get a hold of me. But yeah.
Perfect. Are we close to a Vince Valor on TikTok?
I see that stuff all the time. I like it. It takes a while for me to get into these new trends and new fads. Like I said, it took me a while to get an Instagram and a Snapchat and all that stuff. But like, all right, what's this TikTok now? Everybody like, what is it? They're just lip singing songs, or
Lip
I don't know.
sync or dancing. I tell you what, as much as I want to shit on it, I made one and just put like wrestling clips on it, nothing with me on it. But I will find myself watching just sheer stupidity till 3 o'clock in the morning, flipping through these
It's
videos.
interesting. It's entertaining. It's keeping people busy to like during this quarantine. We're like, all right, let's do TikTok now. That's the new trend. Like, so it's good that people are like using their time to have fun and keep themselves entertained with stuff like that. It's if I do ever get into it, it's going to take a while for me to really understand it.
Yeah, it's PCO's on it. That's how I checked it out first. So he was like, "Yeah, I'm on TikTok, and I'm gonna." His daughter talked him into it or something. So I got on it just to, man, if PCO starts doing dances, I want to be one of the first ones to check it out. Now, one of my final questions: wrestling travel. We're out of the United Kingdom. What we do is we take wrestling fans from around the world to their favorite events. The last one we were able to do before coronavirus was Wrestle Kingdom in Japan. You hook up with us, we get you a flight, we get your hotel, and you get your tickets. Like if you're going to Mania, we got your ticket to Mania, Hall of Fame, Raw, SmackDown, NXT. Now, I have to ask you a travel question because I'm contractually obligated to. What has there been any, have you been able to wrestle internationally, like outside of the US and Canada? Or if not, what has been some of your favorite cities to visit and wrestle in?
Oh boy. I haven't had the chance to wrestle outside of U.S. and Canada as much as I'd love to. Like that's, I guess that's another thing on the bucket list is to wrestle in places like the UK. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'm okay with that. But I've like I mentioned, like ESW is home to me. Like the places we wrestle around here are great. Though those are some of my favorites to wrestle. But also traveling. Like every wrestler's done it. Everyone's had those 10, 15-hour car rides. Like it's a story if nothing else. It's good for the story. I mean, there's not always the great experiences. Like I said, I've traveled to places like West Virginia to Tennessee. I drove 16 hours to Tennessee to wrestle on Viscera's Memorial Show for $11. It's not a fun time, but it's good for the story.
$11.
Well, $11 for the car for the entire car. $11. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I
So
thought maybe the night trip you got there. That's cool. Well, I'll tell you what.
It wasn't a fun time by any means, but yeah.
Yeah, I miss those days, those stories. You know, you just shooting the breeze and all the ridiculousness that kind of happens. And so yeah, well, I'll tell you what. We'll have to monitor, and if we have any opportunities that we see over in the United Kingdom, we'll have to. You got your passport ready to rock?
I do. Yeah, I'm ready to go.
All right, fantastic. So, okay, Vince Valor, I want to say thank you very much. I feel like I talked over
We
you.
wanted a little bit about 15 minutes you mentioned. I mean, I could talk about this stuff for hours, honestly, but
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. What is your? We're gonna end this right now where I said, Vince, thanks for having us. But we have another show that I kind of do like a 5 to 10 minutes. Do you have any? What would be like your best road story?
that's something I'd have to think about. I've got plenty of road stories, but that's something like I'd love to be a part of it. That's something I'm gonna have to think about, like to narrow it down, like what my like most memorable road stories are. Like
Check out I put one on Facebook and it's on our YouTube. But Benjamin Boone, he started just
great guy,
flying
I love him.
with all these stories, and I go, whoa, hold on. I go, let's do this because my guys wanted me to come up with the road stories, and he's got this great story about him wrestling. He's green as goose shit wrestling Scotty Steiner. He said there's some other valet or something there, and it's hilarious. I'll have to let you check it out. But yeah, if you come up with any, hit me up. I should stop recording this because I said it.